1. Let me begin with a bit of backstory to this whole situation. Back in the 8th grade, we were given the chance to attend an overnight, one-week trip to an arts camp as a sort of celebration for the end of the elementary school chapter, before we moved on to middle school. Well, we needed enough signatures and attendees to sign off in order to go. Fortunately, we managed to get enough and the trip was a go for the entire grade. The arts camp was built by a fairly large lake in such a way that it seemed as though the entire camp was a secluded island, aside from one very lengthy roadway exit leading to the main roads. We arrived and we were assigned our cabins and cabin buddies and everything. Some students got auto-assigned to our cabin, as we were short on people per bunk bed. There were a total of 4 bunk beds per cabin, housing 8 students, plus a separate room with a single bed for our cabin leader. Everything was going great until dinner time in the mess hall on the 4th day. My group were all sitting and somehow the conversation brought up that there were plans of cabin teams to break into other cabins and steal their team's flag, while also stealing personal belongings. This made everyone on our team uneasy and we stayed up late that night with our leader to make sure nobody broke in and stole our belongings. Around 11 a.m. is when we decided it's probably best to get some rest for the night. It wasn't until around 2 hours later that loud banging on our door startled me. I don't know what made me hold together my composure in this moment, but I believed that if I pretended I was asleep, they would go away. They didn't. Next thing I know, our door gets kicked open and a group of kids storm into our cabin. One of them was playing the ukulele for some odd reason, while the others were pointing flashlights in people's eyes, including mine. The lights were so bright that I couldn't even make out the silhouettes of the intruders. I turned over to my side and hid under my bunk bed sheets. I slept in the center top bunk the entire stay, so I had a clear view of the main entrance. Hiding under my blankets, I remember vividly pinching my forearm as hard as I can to try and wake myself up, as it must have just been a nightmare. But the pinches hurt a lot. I then performed the hand through the palm reality check, and it never passed through. As a last-ditch panic resort, I closed my eyes and waited for it to be over. When I woke up, it was morning. I was the last one to wake up as we all slept in. My cabin leader says in these exact words, "Steve, let's go. We're going to be late for breakfast." I was in disbelief that nobody in our cabin was talking about last night, so I came straight out and said, "What the hell happened last night?" To my surprise, everybody looked confused. Our leader says, "What do you mean? Nothing happened. We all slept in and we're going to be in deep shit if we don't get to the mess hall in 5 minutes. I then went on to explain the whole situation. Nobody recalled anything. Not even the conversation we had at dinner beforehand about teams breaking into other cabins. Literally nothing about that whole encounter. Nobody recalled a single thing. Not even the staying up late part to make sure nobody broke in. Everyone thought I was crazy. It still bugs me to this day and makes no sense. How could I have physically been awake with everybody and also pass every reality check I did in that moment? But that whole incident never actually happened. I'm 23 now, and it still confuses me to all hell when I think about it to this day. 2. So this idiot I used to date came to my flat and gave me an anatomical heart necklace around Christmas time, which I was so happy to receive as it was just my style and really pretty. Anyway, long story short, me and this clown were drinking to the point where he became extremely drunk and was making a huge ruckus in my flat, falling over and generally acting like a beast from hell. After hours of me trying to get this idiot to calm down and stop falling all over the place, and being a total freak show, I told him to get the fuck out of my place. He then angrily screamed at me to give him the necklace, and I took it off and put it on the windowsill. I then went back to my bedroom because I was leaving for Turkey the next day, and desperately needed this sleep. I went out again because he hadn't left, and I told him to get lost, and he finally did. The next day I see he took the necklace. I thought that was fucked because it was the least thing he could give me after that night of acting totally insane. And he even texted me to apologize about everything and that he would buy me a new necklace. Well, the next night, as I am in Turkey with my friend, I suddenly noticed the anatomical heart necklace lying on my friend's balcony. It was the weirdest thing, and I have no explanation for it. Around 5 years ago, when I was living in London, I noticed that all my favorite jewelry had been stolen. A lot of irreplaceable things that were from my dead grandma, and I was so insanely upset and sad that these things were taken. I did have a lot of paranormal activity in that house, and maybe I sound crazy, but I thought maybe the ghosts had done it, as I couldn't imagine any of my friends stealing from me. They were all my favorite jewelry as well, as if I had been the one to pick them all out, and this just bummed me out even further. For months I was really sad about this, and I have to admit I said out loud more than once, please give me my jewelry back, in case a ghost really had done it. So months pass, and I get a call from my mom who lives in my home country. You won't believe what I just found when I was cleaning out your closet. She was taking over my old bedroom, and then she says, I found all your jewelry in a little bag. Those kinds you get on business class on the airplane that have earplugs, etc. I had not been back to my home country in that time, so it's not like I could be going through some mental psychosis or whatever. And done that myself. And out of all the weird happenings in my life, I think this is the strangest. Another potential glitch was a few years ago when I worked at a toy shop. My colleague found half a dead bee crawling on the floor, out of under one of the toy shelves, and put it on a piece of paper and took it outside. Literally 10 minutes later, the very same bee came crawling out from the same spot. And we found it so weird. Of course, there could have been 2 dead bees crawling out from under the same spot, but that is some weird coincidence. I don't know if this is a glitch or not, but the other day I was in my bed and for some reason started thinking whether a bird had been trapped in my living room, seeming to remember it. And pondered the thought before I settled with no, that hasn't happened. That must be my imagination of a memory. And my mind wandered elsewhere. Around 30 minutes after this thought, a huge wood pigeon flew through my window and got trapped, and knocked over my plants and banged itself into the window quite a few times before I managed to get him out. So, those are all my glitches. 3. This happened earlier this evening, and I'm not quite sure what to make of it. Some backstory. My husband is away in a different city for work reasons. He stays in the same hotel every time, and I've stayed there too, so we're pretty used to it. Not sure if it's important to add this, but I thought I will just in case it helps find an explanation. He has 2 mobile phones, one for work and the other is personal. I don't have his work mobile number on my phone, as I don't need to, and also because my phone is pretty new and I'm too lazy to update my contacts list. Earlier this evening, we FaceTimed so he can wish our daughter good night as usual, and he told me about his plans to go to the hotel gym and sauna, and maybe grab a drink after to unwind. This was around 6 p.m. 6:30 p.m. I got my daughter ready for her bedtime routine, which consists of bath, milk, storytime, and cuddles. Usually by 8 my daughter is fast asleep. Tonight she was awake until 8:45 and I was exhausted. Around 9 p.m. my phone rings and I quickly answer it to avoid waking my daughter. I didn't recognize the number, so politely answered and asked who it was. No answer. Just some background sound as if the phone is in a tunnel, but I can hear a distant garbled voice. I hang up and it rings again 5 minutes later. Again no one is talking and the same noises. 3rd time. I told the person I was going to block their number if they didn't respond and they hung up. I was downstairs in our living room by then. I found this to be odd, and as I am bad at keeping my phone book updated, I asked my husband via text if he knew the number. He immediately replied with, "That's my work number, why?" And I laughed before replying with, "Stop crank calling me." He immediately called me from his personal phone to check what I was on about. He said his work phone was in the room and he was at the bar. It would have been impossible for me to receive any calls from his work phone. I told him to go check and that I would send him a screenshot of the call history as proof. Whilst I was doing that, I got a voicemail from his work phone. First few seconds there was silence and then some background noise as before. I sent my husband the screenshot and he raced to his room to check. The bloody phone was on the bedside table where he left it. The call history showed calls to my number. He sent me a screenshot too. Neither of us know how or why this phone called me. We've joked about it being some technical glitch or glitches, but deep down we're both wondering, WTF was that? No, he didn't have anyone else in his room. Any thoughts? 4. A series of strange things has happened to me throughout my life. Some are so bizarre that I can't even comprehend how they could have happened. Just to give you an idea of how bizarre of an incident I'm talking about here, I once logged into the Skype account of a celebrity in my home country, Iran, by simply registering her Skype handle. You read that right. I tried registering the username of another Skype user who happened to be a famous celebrity in Iran, and it worked, and I got in. There was even some contacts in the account that belonged to the real owner of it. But this thread isn't about those type of events. It's about something that has been happening to me lately. It's the simple act of opening a lock with the wrong key. A couple nights ago, a friend of mine texted me around 11:30 p.m. and told me he has had a rough day and asked if he can come over and talk to me and hang out. I could tell he was drunk, and since my roommate was already asleep, I told him to meet me in the front of the building that my office is in. My office is located one street away from my home. I took my time getting ready and decided to walk there. When I got there and saw him waiting for me in front of the building, we talked a bit, and I tried to open the door to the building so we can get in, and I realized that I don't have the right keychain with me. I have 2 keychains, one for my home and office keys and one for the rarely used keys like storage keys and the like. I didn't have the office keys with me, so I had to go back home, ring the doorbell, and woke my roommate up so he can let me in, just so I can pick up the right keychain and come back out to take my friend to my office. It was a hassle, and I knew my roommate is going to give me shit for waking him up. So as I was walking towards my house and getting ready to ring the doorbell, I was already imagining the shitstorm and was basically mentally preparing myself for the confrontation with my roommate, because I knew he was going to turn it into a whole thing. I was too caught up in my head in that imaginary conversation with my roommate over why I would have woken him up. And suddenly I realized that I'm inside the building and I'm walking up the stairs. I live on the 4th floor. I stood on the stairs for a moment thinking, wait a second, how did I get in? And I looked down and I saw that I was holding the key to my storage unit in my hand. I went down to the door and tried to put the key in, and it didn't even go inside the lock. Somehow, without even consciously thinking about it, I had opened the door to my house with a key that didn't even fit the lock. Ever since that night, I have had 2 more incidents where I have opened a door with the wrong key. Both times I did it while I wasn't thinking about what I was doing, and just after realized what has happened. Anyone else here have a similar experience to mine? 5. So this is going to be a little bit weird, but it is something that has been happening since World War I. One male of each generation winds up meeting a French lover, falling for them for a brief period of time, then they wind up getting separated until they are around 40, and becoming their second and to-death wife. My great-grandfather was injured during the Meuse-Argonne offensive in World War I. As a senior NCO, while he was recovering from an injury, he fell for a French translator and they had an affair. After returning home, he retired and conceived my grandfather. My great-great-grandmother died in childbirth, and when great-grandfather turned 40 in 1927, the French woman hunted him down and they got married. She raised my grandfather like he was her own. Fast forward to my grandfather. He grew up learning French from his stepmother, who was the only French woman. Growing up in West Virginia due to the Depression and the coal mines hiring veterans, she was the only French person around. Come World War II, my grandfather joins the army and was part of the invasion of Normandy. He got wounded there and was nursed back to health by a French nurse. They fell in love, and the war separated them. Fast forward to 1947, grandfather marries a girl back home, and they moved to my mother's home state. 3 kids were born, 1 boy and 2 girls. The mom left him and the kids for another guy, and in came his French lover, who had came to America and became a nurse. They met again at the doctor's office when he turned 42. He was getting my mom a checkup. She was a new hire. Sparks rekindled. She became wife number 2. The boy, my uncle, goes off to fight in Vietnam, He was OCS'd because he learned how to fly aircraft at 16 to be a crop duster, and had the reflexes to be a fighter pilot. He gets shot down, and crashes near this orphanage the French had long forgotten when they were there. The Frenchwoman this time, my aunt, was a nun who had no clue how bad things were going because they were cut off from everyone, and just thought they had forgotten to send food supplies. He managed to get them to safety thanks to an Air Force search and rescue. They fell for each other during the trip towards the territory still controlled by the Americans, and they wrote to each other until the church pulled her someplace else, and they lost touch with each other. She left the church in the late 1970s and tracked him down. He was about my age and had just gotten a divorce from the 1970s prototype of a choosing beggar after a year of marriage when she had found him. He had had no kids, but she gave him a daughter, my cousin, now me. I pre-enlisted in 1999 and was a JROTC student. I wanted to go to college, but my family couldn't afford it. I dreamed of IT work, but MEPS offered me a corpsman position. At the time I took it and graduated, went to boot camp. My uncle showed up for graduation and warned me it would happen to me. I'd meet a French girl, have a brief fling, etc. I thought I was going to be handing basically an orderly's job aboard a ship or on a base after graduating. Nope, 9/11 happened. Before gearing up for Afghanistan, I'm retrained to be a field medic for Marines. Life was hell, but I went on to be attached to some Marines units. By the time I was in Iraq, I was sick of the killing, the fighting, but knew they'd just send some fresh-faced kid to replace me, so I stuck with it. I was in a dark place when my beloved, let's call her Jeanette, contacted me on MySpace looking for a friend of hers, a foreign exchange student she had went to school with. We started talking, and it became a full-on cyber romance. Then she got a cyber stalker and had to create a new account. Gave me a warning that it was going to be one of those anime profiles you saw on there back then to avoid him, and gave me a link. The only problem, she missed one letter in a new link's address, and had deleted the account before I had access to the internet again thanks to a mission. Last week, out of the blue, she sent me a friend request. As we reconnected, talked about the past decade and what had happened in our lives. Sparks rekindled. Is this a strange, benevolent glitch? Is this the guardian spirit of France somehow rewarding my family for coming to the nation's aid when it was needed? Or is it a sign my family needs to relocate there? Or something entirely different? Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Glitch in the Matrix Stories, episode 112. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their story in this video. That last story made me all mushy. Also made me feel a little bit lonely, actually. Being single sucks. Anyway, that story was sent in by someone who one of our mods here brought to my attention through the Discord channel. So that was very lovely of them to do, and very nice of them to share the story with us. Okay, currently 11 o'clock on Wednesday, so I'll have to run down to the hospital tomorrow. Hope that grumpy nurse isn't there. Nothing you ever do seems right for her. You're doing your damnedest, you're applying the gunk, but whatever. Anyway, pick that up then. I won't need to see them again till Monday, hopefully. Annoying thing happened today. Right, anyone who's ever gotten like a delivery from Amazon will know you can have like delivery preferences, right? Yeah, well, and my preferences, and I've had to put them in a couple of times just so they have enough sense to do it, is leave them in the blue bin. That's the paper recycling bin, so either in or behind it. Because I don't mind it going in there because it's just paper and cardboard. What they've been doing lately is leaving them right at the front door, where anybody walking by could see them. They can't see them if they leave them where I tell them to. Also keeps the rain off them. And they can't even deny they're doing it because Amazon takes pictures now when they drop a delivery off. So they've got the pictures. They know where they've been left, and then they know it's not where I told them to leave it. But on the bright side, I do have a new pair of Vans, Vans that don't have holes in them, so that'll be nice for walking around tomorrow. It's always good when your shoes don't have holes in the bottom of them. Would be nicer if they lasted longer than they do, but they are very, very comfy. And that's the only reason I keep buying them, because they are very comfy. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.